as robust as possible, includes as many people as possible. This problem that we're trying to solve of energy independence for this country, clean energy for the world, requires the hearts and the minds of all Americans. This is a problem that's too big to solve by any one little sector or city, but all of us working together can solve it by taking individual actions and also supporting Congress as it moves forward to get the public rules right to unleash this energy innovation transformation.
Great. We have a question out of my hometown, Chicago, Illinois. Bill Higgins wants to know, how can we improve the energy and rental units? Many people have landlords who might not have as much incentive if the tenant is paying the electric heating bill. So what can tenants do?
Yep. This is one of the big barriers to energy efficiency. It's called the split incentive problem, where you have a property that is owned by one party, but the energy bill is paid by another. Now that could be a business, that could be a family that's renting. And so the only way to get that energy bill down is for the homeowner to do something, or for the property owner to do something that he or she may not have an economic incentive to do. What we are working on right now is coming up with ways to actually work with utility companies, to help with utility companies that want to do this, to get around this problem. Because there is the opportunity, and you're starting to see experiments going on now, where utility companies can play a great role in helping to get energy costs down. And as we move forward into a more, once we get our climate bill passed, I should say, they'll have a great incentive in utility companies to help, because they will want to stay under that carbon cap. They're not going to want to be wasting energy. And so a part of the long-term play here is to bring in other parties who can benefit, who can bring forward new products, who can bring forward new services, and help deal with the split incentive problem.
Great. We have a question out of Central New Jersey from Dan Fatan. Can you elaborate on what local governments can do to encourage green businesses open and locate in their communities? We've visited communities like Charlottesville,
Yes.
we've been in Philadelphia, Lansing.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of that?
Yeah, you know, it's great. Local governments, of course, were way out in front of the federal government on a lot of these issues. Your great hometown of Chicago, for instance, has a green mayor, and Mayor Daley, that has been pushing this for a long time, and other great green mayors, Mayor Nichols in Seattle and other places. So Mayor Nutter in Philadelphia. So there's lots and lots of mayors. They're way out in front on this, and so there's a huge wealth of knowledge about how to do this. One of the things that we saw in Congressman Piriello's district was this incredible joint effort between the city and community groups to weatherize homes and let people pay back the loans to upgrade their homes as a part of their overall energy package. Those kinds of innovations are really important. But here's some of the things that cities can do. Number one, procurement. Cities buy stuff. And what a city decides to buy and where a city decides to buy it from can make a tremendous difference in the growing of a local green economy. The other thing that you have in cities are schools, and what a school board decides to do in terms of focusing on local healthy food versus processed food from nobody knows where, focusing on edible schoolyards, following the example of our First Lady, who has done her own organic garden. Schools can also be great places to have solar panel arrays and use those as learning laboratories. Schools can also be great places for after-school programming around environmental consciousness. So there's a whole schools agenda. The other piece that is important, I think, with regard to cities, besides what cities buy, it's also what cities permit. Cities have the opportunity through their building codes and through other measures to really encourage smarter growth, to really encourage more efficient buildings when they're built. It's a lot easier to make a building green from the very beginning and to have very high standards at the very beginning than to have to come back and do a retrofit agenda. Now, we are going to have to retrofit a lot of our buildings, but cities really have their hands on the reins in terms of what the next generation of buildings look like. So the local action is critical. We want to make sure that those local mayors, for instance, who fought for the Green Block Grant, so they could do a lot of this work, have the full support of the federal government going forward.
Great. We have a question from Kevin Shea out of Suffolk County, New York, who wants to know, How do we create financial incentives for this? So we can be saving money spent by the government by taking, citizen money and spending our government. I think we can talk about recovery investments potentially and some of the work being done in the energy bill right now.
Sure. Well, our fundamental strategy here, and I'm glad you put it in terms of incentives, our fundamental strategy here, and I think sometimes it's been misunderstood, is to unleash the private sector. This problem is too big in terms of getting America energy independent, making sure that we're creating the clean energy solutions for the world. It's too big, and creating jobs here, it's too big a problem for government to solve. Certainly not on its own, but government can be a partner to the problem solvers who will be in the private sector. How do you unleash private innovation? Well, you can learn a lesson from the information revolution we just went through. Government did 2 things right, and then the private sector did 98 other things amazingly well, and that's why we live in a world where you can't even have a conversation without saying Twitter, YouTube, right, Google, Yahoo, all these.
Facebook right now?
You're on Facebook right now. You can't even have a conversation. And most of those terms didn't even exist 5 years ago. If you walked around saying Google, Yahoo, Twitter 5 years ago, somebody locked you up because they thought you were crazy. So how did that happen? How did you have such a dramatic transformation? Well, government did 2 things right and let the private sector do the other 98 things exceptionally well. The 2 things government can do right. Number 1, it can get the public investments right. Google didn't build the internet. The government actually built the internet to make sure that we had an information system that couldn't be taken down at any one point. The government did that. And then government, after it got the public investments right, it then got the public rules right so that anybody could participate, anybody could play. What we're trying to do is copy that onto the information, into the world of energy. What would that mean? Number 1, getting the public investments right. That's our $80 billion. $80 billion in our recovery package to jumpstart a smart grid, smart batteries, all those things to get that train moving. But the most important thing we can do is to get the public rules right. And that is the climate and energy bill that is moving through Congress right now. That will be the big incentive, because what it will do, carefully crafted to make sure that we don't have any shocks or anything negative to the system, but what it will do, it will create economic incentives, rip through, so that we get that innovation. Suddenly, you will have people saying, hey, guess what? Maybe not this year, but at some point down the road, I can see that these old, dirty ways of using energy are going to become too expensive for me. Let me start to invest. Let me start to purchase. Let me start to move in this other direction where I'm using less energy and I'm using cleaner energy. I'm using energy in smarter ways. That creates a whole new context. Suddenly, here comes a stampede of entrepreneurs, a stampede of inventors, a stampede of innovators who come forward with new products and new services. 10 years from now, there could literally be a whole new world of energy products and services that are just as much a household name as YouTube or Yahoo that right now we can't even imagine.
Okay. We have a question from Chris Ruse, who wants to know, what are the most feasible return on investment changes we can make right now, and how do we fast track these technologies in the next year for the majority of Americans? So gotcha. What can people do right now?
Well, right now, the quickest return on investments have to do with energy efficiency. They have to do with retrofitting our homes, weatherizing our homes, and making those personal choices so that we waste less energy overall. And some of the stuff, this is corny, but it's really not corny. Changing the light bulbs in your house. People have said it a million times. How many of you have done it though? How many of you actually have LEDs or complex fluorescent light bulbs throughout your home? Doing simple things like unplugging the BlackBerry or charger, or the cell phone charger, or the iPod charger when it's not plugged in there. You say, yeah, I know, but how many of you honestly have one plugged in right next to you and there's no phone there? Those things actually don't cost you any money. They save you money, but they actually help us to use less energy. The other thing in terms of how do we deploy this stuff all across America? I couldn't be any prouder of our recovery team, having gotten, and 24% of the time, we've gotten out 27% of the dollars. Our recovery process is a 2-year process. We're a little bit more than 150 days in, and yet we've already been able to actually get more money out the door than we're supposed to. By the end of September, we're on track to have 70% of those dollars out the door. I think that what you can best do, especially in those cities where Mayors will be getting money to retrofit buildings.